Hello and welcome to our new tutorial series on the navigation architecture component. So first thing first, what is the navigation component? Historically, we use intents to navigate from one activity to another. Using intents, we can encounter different type of exceptions. Just in case we forget to pass a variable in the intent that is required for the next activity. This can cause a null pointer exception as we don't give the next activity the proper variables that is required by it. And what if you pass a variable that has a different type and the required activity gets it by a different type? It can cause a type mismatch exception. Navigation component consists of three important parts. The first one being the navigation graph. Navigation graph is an XML file that helps us in connecting different fragments and making a graph in which we can see how our app is navigating between different fragments. Like this one that I am showing you on the screen right now. You can see that different fragments are being connected through lines. These lines are called actions and the fragments are called the destinations. Using these actions, we can navigate from one destination to another. These actions are generated as resource files, and using these resource files we can navigate from one destination to another in our Kotlin code or our Java code. One more thing that the navigation component helps us in doing is that here on the screen I can easily understand how in my app different fragments are placed and how my user can navigate between these fragments. It also helps in passing arguments as the intent and mechanism of passing intents is quite different here. We will see that in just a moment. So the next thing is the navigation controller. A controller is attached to this navigation graph which helps us in controlling the navigation between different fragments, and it can be used inside the fragment to move from one destination fragment to another destination fragment. It also helps us in different things which we will learn while studying the navigation graph playlist or the tutorial playlist that we will be making. So the last thing is the NavHost fragment. The NavHost fragment. A NavHost fragment hosts the fragments that are pushed on the screen. It is present in the main activity and can host every fragment that is in the navigation graph. So every fragment that is in the navigation graph, the destinations that we talked about will be shown in the NavHost fragments. So here are some facts about the navigation component. A navigation component is a library that can be added into the Gradle dependencies, and you can use it by simply adding the dependency. So what's next? It makes a navigation easier by introducing a navigation graph that we just talked about, and you can now understand how it makes it easier to navigate. Okay, so the third point is that it can handle the backstack and automates the fragment transaction. This means that you can manipulate the navigation of your app to the NavHost fragment by deleting or pushing out a fragment from the backstack while user comes back from a fragment or moves to a new fragment. The fourth type is that it gives us the ability to pass type safe arguments using safe arguments clause. We will discuss it in the next slide, so wait for it. And most important thing of the navigation component is that it can help us in making transitions while moving from one fragment to another. You just have to create the animation in an XML file and use it in the navigation graph. Another important part of the navigation architecture component is the Safe Arguments plugin. Safe Arguments plugin helps us in removing all the exceptions that we talked about earlier, being the null pointer exception and type mismatch exception and many others. What it does is that it simply generates some classes, direction and arguments classes, which helps us in passing different arguments between our fragments. It checks whether the type is the correct, whether the argument is passed or not, for eliminating all the null pointer exception, and all the type mismatch exceptions. So it makes it easier to pass arguments between different fragments. You will see in the coming tutorials, generate different arguments and classes. Like you can see on the screen now, it has generated the actions, so it has generated the action and the arguments classes, which helps us in passing different arguments between our fragments. And it works out of the box with the navigation component. You just have to add the dependency and apply the plugin. So the last thing we have here is the pros of using the navigation component. It works out of the box with the material design, like if you want to create a menu or you want to create a navigation drawer that you can see on your screen right now. It makes it easier to create both of these things. The navigation drawer only requires a single line of code to be placed on your screen, while the menu creation just requires the name of the menu item to be matched with the ID of the fragment, and you don't need to add a click listener on it. And by matching the names, navigation component can handle the navigation between the menu item and the navigation fragment. So that's all for today, and we will discuss more about the navigation component in the next lecture. We will start coding our navigation component via. So till then, take care and don't forget to subscribe and like and share if you like my video.